Most players need years to understand the game. At 17, Neymar was already rewriting it, not with strength, not with speed, but with something far more dangerous: control. Control of the ball, control of defenders, control of the moment. And that's what shocked everyone, because what he was doing didn't look normal, it looked effortless. While most young players rushed every touch, Neymar slowed the game down. He played at his own rhythm, like everything around him was moving too fast, except him. And that's the first thing you need to understand. Neymar at 17 wasn't just skilled, he was composed. Every time he received the ball, he wasn't thinking about what to do next. He already knew before the defender stepped in, before the pressure arrived, before the space even opened. He had already decided. That's what made him so dangerous, because defenders weren't reacting to Neymar. They were reacting too late. And when you're always late against a player like that, you don't just lose the ball. You lose control of the entire situation. Watch closely and you'll notice something different. Neymar didn't rely on complicated moves all the time. In fact, most of his actions were simple. A slight pause, a small shift of weight, a subtle change of direction. That's it. But those small details created big problems, because defenders expect speed, they expect aggression, they expect predictable patterns. Neymar gave them none of that. He played with hesitation, but not his own. He made them hesitate. And that single moment of doubt was all he needed. At 17, he wasn't just beating players, he was manipulating them, making them step when they shouldn't, making them wait when they should attack, making them commit, and then punishing them for it. That's why he looked untouchable, not because he was faster, but because he was always one step ahead mentally. And once you understand this, you start to see that Neymar's talent wasn't just natural, it was intelligent. And that's where things get even more interesting, because what he was doing next, that's what truly separated him from everyone else. What truly made Neymar different at 17 wasn't just his decisions, it was how his body executed them. Because there's a detail most people miss. Neymar didn't just react to defenders. He controlled their reactions through his body language. Every movement had intention. Look at the way he approached the defender. He didn't run straight at them at full speed. He slowed down just enough to stay in control, but fast enough to force the defender into a decision. And that's the trap, because once a defender is forced to decide, they're already vulnerable. Neymar used micro movements to create that pressure. A slight drop of the shoulder, a quick shift of his hips, a change in stride length. These aren't random, they're signals, and defenders read those signals instinctively. When Neymar leans one way, the defender shifts. When Neymar pauses, the defender hesitates. When Neymar accelerates, the defender commits. And in that exact moment, Neymar changes everything. That's what makes his dribbling so effective. It's not about doing something unpredictable at the last second. It's about making the defender believe they understand what's coming and then breaking that expectation. At 17, he had already mastered this. His touches were soft but precise, always close enough to keep control, but spaced just enough to invite pressure. That balance is extremely hard to achieve. Too close and you become predictable. Too far and you lose control. Neymar stayed right in the middle. And because of that, defenders felt like they had a chance. But that chance was exactly what Neymar wanted them to feel, because the moment they stepped in, they were already outplayed. Another key detail, his center of gravity. Neymar naturally stayed low when moving with the ball. This gave him faster adjustments and better balance. So even when a defender tried to make contact, Neymar could absorb it and still keep control. At 17, this level of coordination is extremely rare. Most players are still developing basic control. But Neymar was already combining balance, timing, and deception into one fluid movement, and that's why his dribbling didn't look forced. It looked natural, almost effortless. But behind that effortless style, there was precision in every step. And once you understand how he used his body, you start to realize something else. He wasn't just reacting to the game, he was guiding it. And that leads to the next level of his game, the part that made defenders not just lose the ball, but lose confidence completely. But what truly made Neymar terrifying at 17 wasn't just what he did with the ball, it was what he did to defenders mentally. Because after the first dribble, something changes. The defender stops playing naturally. Now they're thinking. And in football, the moment you start thinking too much, you're already at a disadvantage. Neymar understood this better than most players, even at that age. Every time he beat someone, he wasn't just creating space, he was planting doubt. The next time that defender faced him, they hesitated. Should I step in? Should I wait? What is he going to do this time? That hesitation is everything. Because football at the highest level is played in fractions of a second. And Neymar was stealing those fractions from his opponents. One hesitation is all it takes. Now imagine this happening over and over again. One dribble turns into two turns into three, and Suddenly, the defender isn't trying to win the ball anymore. They're just trying not to get embarrassed. That's the shift. And Neymar thrived in that moment. At 17, he already had the confidence to keep attacking, to keep challenging, to go at defenders again and again and again. Most young players, after one success, slow down. They play safe. Neymar did the opposite. He amplified the pressure. And this is where his unpredictability became unstoppable, because now the defender isn't reacting to the ball. Yeah, they're reacting to fear. Fear of being beaten again. Fear of making the wrong move. Fear of losing control. And when fear enters the game, decision-making collapses. That's when Neymar took over completely. He didn't need to force anything. The defender would make the mistake for him. A wrong step, a delayed reaction, an unbalanced stance, and Neymar would exploit it instantly. That's why at such a young age he looked so dominant, not because he was physically superior, but because he controlled the mental side of the duel. He turned every 1v1 into a psychological battle, and most defenders had already lost before it even started. But here's the most important part. This wasn't just talent, it was awareness. Neymar understood how people react under pressure, and he used that against them, which leads to the final piece. The one thing that made everything come together and turned a 17-year-old into a player the world couldn't ignore. The final piece of Neymar's game at 17 was freedom, not reckless freedom, controlled freedom. Because while most young players were taught to avoid mistakes, Neymar embraced them. He wasn't afraid to lose the ball. He wasn't afraid to try something risky. And most importantly, he wasn't afraid of how it looked. That mindset changed everything. Because when you remove fear, you unlock creativity. And Neymar played with a level of creativity that defenders simply couldn't predict. At 17, he wasn't following patterns. He was creating them in real time. One moment he slows the game down, the next he explodes past you. One touch looks simple, the next breaks your balance completely. There was no clear rhythm to defend, no consistent behavior to read. And that's what made him so difficult to stop, because defenders rely on patterns. They study body shape, they anticipate movement, they react based on experience. But Neymar gave them nothing stable to rely on. Every action carried a new possibility. And when everything is possible, nothing is predictable. That's chaos for a defender. But for Neymar, that's control. And here's what most people don't realize. This freedom wasn't random. It was built on everything you've seen so far. His composure, his body control, his understanding of defenders, his psychological impact, all of it worked together. So when Neymar improvised, it wasn't luck. It was calculated. Every move had a purpose, even when it looked spontaneous. That's why at just 17, he didn't just stand out. He dominated. He forced defenders into uncomfortable situations. He dictated the tempo of every 1v1. He turned simple plays into moments of brilliance, and the world noticed. Because players like that don't appear often. They don't wait to grow into the game. They arrive and change it immediately. And that's exactly what Neymar did. At 17, he didn't just show potential, he showed identity, a way of playing that was fearless, intelligent, and impossible to ignore. And once you understand this, you stop seeing Neymar as just a skillful player. You start seeing him for what he really was, a problem no defender was ready to solve.